Hello, friends. We are live again, and we're going low tech version now because for some reason there was a really bad echo in the last try. So I'm just going with my little headset here. Welcome to this Q&A on intuition, and this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because I feel like when we connect with our intuition, we are connected with our soul self, and it sounds like a big thing, but it's actually what a beautiful way to live, aligned with your soul and your heart, instead of just like the brain or the noises from the exterior world. And so I've got some questions that I have gathered from people who are interested, like what is intuition? What is the difference between being intuitive and being psychic? And am I psychic? Yes, you are, by the way. Uh, do I know, or how do I know the difference between my thoughts, feelings, and my intuition? I've got question 4 is how do I leverage my intuition in a consistent way and learn to trust it more? And 5 is why do I feel blocked when it comes to connecting with my intuition? So, I'm just going to kind of see what comes up, and if I have time, I'll answer all 5 of those questions. If you are here with us live, feel free to type in a question in the chat or just say hello and tell me where you are. I think, let me just talk a little bit about how I got interested in this whole topic of intuition. And maybe like you, maybe there are certain times in your life where the decisions that you made didn't necessarily make rational sense, but when you followed that internal voice, and again, the internal voice can be received or heard in many different ways. But when you followed that, it opened up more possibilities and potentials that you might not have considered if you just worked your life through an Excel spreadsheet of pros and cons. And, just for my own story, I think I started receiving a lot of feedback that I was very intuitive at a point in my life where I was starting to coach other people, and people just kept saying, "Wow, you're really intuitive. You kind of know the right question to ask and the right timing." And I'm like, "Yeah, isn't everybody and everyone is intuitive? We're born with this, what they call the sixth sense, because it helps us navigate life." And on a spiritual perspective, because your intuition is the language of your soul, it's going to use all of your senses. So, how you feel about things, even simple things like which grocery line feels like the right one to get into. Like, you can just always go in line 2, or the clerk in line 2, so you go to that one. Or if you're kind of led by your intuition, just like which line feels right today. Um, so, my journey with intuition was first just kind of feeling like I knew things as a kid, and later in life, seeking out, really having kind of this spiritual awakening where I was trying to learn more about the soul and, delved into things like mediumship, which is a beautiful way to leverage the intuitive gifts. Um, because it gives you a chance to verify in a way that I think you can verify also with pure intuition. Um, but it was a good practice for me to practice with mediumship. So basically, the soul's language is your intuition. And it's not just a gut feeling, it works through all of your senses. So things that you might get images in your mind, things that you see or even drawn to in your field, the things that you might hear, almost like a voice in your head, thoughts, it'll come thought form to thought form, like directly into your brain. You might also feel things in your body, smell, and even taste. So it uses all of your senses. It's the voice of the soul, and it allows you to know the unknown, see the unseen. It is really, really amazing. The ways that you can leverage your intuition. So if you think about, if we the second question was, am I psychic? And what's the difference between being psychic and intuitive? So a lot of times, at least in US culture, we associate being psychic with the ability to see the future. And that's actually one ability that we all have. It's called precognition. And, whether it is just that moment where your phone rings and you're thinking, oh, yeah, like I know who that is, that's your precognition. Um, or I feel like you're thinking about, your mom or something, and then she picks up the phone and calls you, that's precognition. So being able to see the future, it can be just like short-term future or it can be longer term. The issue, quote unquote, issue that I have with purely doing precognition is that, especially when you're getting an intuitive reading, is that we all have free will. And so if I were to say, you are going to make $1 million in the lottery, but you never buy a ticket, then that's not going to happen, right? So precognition, future possibilities, and I think the possibilities is a good thing, like the future potentiality. So if you're doing an intuitive read for yourself on your work or a relationship, being able to tune into future possibilities, I think is really powerful, or doing that for someone else. One, of course, another way to leverage intuition is just to make decisions. I know of someone who they roll dice to make decisions about even, their plans for the day. And, maybe actually you can somehow, it's kind of like a card reading. Your energy could kind of match what seems important. But I think if you were to ask it questions like, is it in my highest good to go to this Halloween party tonight, or to this street or that street to trick or treat? You'd be very interesting to see how your intuition leads you for decision making. Guidance, to get unstuck. Your intuition is certainly there to be a positive force to help get you unstuck. And if you're watching this video and you're interested in intuition, it means that your soul is already like knocking on your door to say, yeah, I'm here. And because the language of intuition is generally subtle, if it needs to save your life, it will for sure. It can come through a little bit more startingly, but generally it's almost like a whisper. So guidance to help you live a life in alignment, it's absolutely what it's there to support you with. Another fun aspect of intuition is called telepathy. And my friend and I were just talking about the telepathy tapes. Everyone is telepathic, not just non-speaking, autistic people who, if you imagine my child right now is in high school and at lunch, and I can just imagine them and I can send them love just from my mind to their mind. And you can communicate telepathically with anyone. And that's really fun, and read people's minds. Um, and healing is a beautiful way to leverage intuition as well. So healing is, just sending energy, or focused awareness. um, Remote viewing. And again, a lot of psychics work with remote viewing, especially if they're doing psychic detection. So for example, I had a friend who knew of a hiker who was lost in Brazil, and they were searching to find this hiker. Um, and, we brought together several psychics from different parts of the world. I've never been to that hiking region, but I could kind of get a sense, or what I was tapping into is a sense of which direction he was facing, as well as his physical capabilities in that moment. So remote viewing can be really helpful, again, in kind of extreme situations where you're trying to locate someone, but even let's say you want to move to a new city, or you want to see the office situation in a new job that you're taking, you can do remote viewing and tap into not only how it looks, but the energy of a place. So those are just some of the ways you can use your intuition. I think one of the things that I've learned about intuition is that it's not unkind. So it's never going to say like you should, and it's not fear-based. And I think for myself and a lot of people that I know well, The thoughts of the mind can be so strong, and anxiety can be such a loud voice, almost like it's just a constant murmur in today's life. So when the intuition comes in, when we stop and just take a beat to even ask the question, is this in my highest good, or is it in my highest good to XYZ? And take a beat and listen, then your intuition can come forward. And really, the key is to just receive it. And this is also so countercultural. Like, we want to go and grasp for any kind of information that we need in the world, but simply to ask questions. And your intuition loves targets. So, asking it very specific questions, even yes, no questions. Um, Instead of should I questions, like, is it in my highest good? What do I need to know about? Those are good open ended questions. And just know that when you stop to receive information, that even neutral, like even just a neutral feeling, is an answer. So I think one of the beauties of getting to know, if you're developing your intuition, what we call the clairs. And simply said, there are four main clairs in which we receive intuitive information. So one is clear seeing, that's called clairvoyance. And so if you get an image in your mind, or let's say, I ask, is it in my highest good to have pumpkin soup for dinner? And it's like you see a YES written out, then that's like a clairvoyant yes. Or like a green light, that might be someone's symbol for yes, like kind of like a go. Or you might get a no, or just like an N or an X or a red no. The other clair, which is really, I think it's the queen of the clairs, is your clairsentience, and that's your clear feeling. So if I ask you, what is, let's see here, let me think of a good feeling or a good question that might trigger your clairsentience. Think of a person in your life that you're not super close with, someone maybe you just met, and now ask yourself, is it in your highest good to form a closer relationship with that person? And then just feel what you feel in your body. And again, if you're clairsentient, you'll have a physical sensation. Like, I felt like this kind of acidic feeling in my stomach, which to me is a no for the person that I was thinking of. A lot of times my yes is like a goosebumps, kind of electric feeling up and down my legs. I know some people that I've worked with, their hands get warm if that's a yes, or they feel like kind of a closing in the head or the heart when it's a no. So clairsentience is active for all of us because the whole body is a vehicle for clairsentience. I think what I find with my intuition students, and let me know if this resonates, feel free to say hi in the chat, but because, we're so not connected to our bodies, like how many times are we hungry and we don't eat, or we're tired and we don't sleep? So clairsentience is always available, but sometimes I think we're just not so tapped into the body because again, we're kind of going through our day a little bit focused on the mind, the head ball, as my best friend says. Okay, so we talked about clairvoyance, clairsentience. Clairaudience is the third type of clair, and that's clear hearing. And for some people, this can come through like a voice. It can sound like an actual voice, or it's like a voice inside your head. So let me think, if I can trigger your clairaudience. Let me try this. How about think of a person that you love. All right, just think of them, bring them to your mind. You can bring them in your mind's eye. Imagine them in front of you. Now, imagine you invite them to whisper into your ear and just hear their voice. So you see, it's like you're not actually hearing them, but in your mind, you can get the transmission of how they would sound. And maybe like if they were to send you a message right now of support or love or just a greeting or a little joke that you had between us, like what would they say? Just allow that voice to just come into your ear. Just see what they have to say for a sec. So that's your clear audience. Again, how subtle is that? It's like, am I making that up in my mind? But I can, if I tune into that person who loves me, I can imagine and I can hear their voice and how they sound and kind of like what joke they would say in my ear. All right. So the fourth kind is called clear cognizance. And clear cognizance is clear thinking. Now, many of us are clear cognizant. And I think the challenge, and I'll say the challenge and the beauty. So the beauty, let's start with the beauty. The beauty is that it's fast. So it'll come straight into your mind. You know, people who do channeling, it's like it's almost like open up, like there's a funnel that's coming right through you, through the top of your head and out your mouth. And it's, is this my thought or is this, my higher self? Because it's just going into your brain. Sometimes it feels like lightning, you're just, poof, I just know. I just know it's grocery store line two, or I just know it's this person calling. It's not that I see them or I hear their voice or I feel it in my body. I just know. So clear cognizance, that's the beauty. It's the fastest. And the challenge, I would say, is that for many of us, because it's so fast and because it's through our mind, and we're so much in our minds, we're like, is that me and my thoughts? Or is that really my intuition? And we'll talk about how I think you can work with that as well. All right, so those are the four clairs. Let's see. I'm hopping around here. What is psychic? So psychic is the same thing as being intuitive and being psychic. Maybe I answered that already, but it's not just about seeing the future. Your psychic awareness is your intuition, and it's much more than the future. You are psychic. You're born psychic. You're also mediumistic. That means that anyone can connect with spirit because it's using the same intuitive capacities. Not everyone develops that, but it is available through all of your psychic senses. All right, question 3. Question 3 is, how do I know the difference between my thoughts, my feelings, and my intuition? So I'll say a couple of things here. First off, that you know the difference because your intuition is always going to give you bits of information at a time. It doesn't bring through the whole message at once. So if you've ever had an intuitive reading, for example, and someone's reading like your future job potential, what they're typically doing, and I've done this for my clients too, is you're getting bit of information by bit of information, and you're telling a story based on the pictures that you're getting, the words that you're hearing, the feelings in your body. So it develops a story. So it's like your intuition will come in chunks, and the key is to slow down enough to receive them. They will not be anxiety ridden. They will not try to scare you. Again, unless it's a life or death situation, it's going to be calm and neutral, and not like a judgmental, you should be doing this, or why did you get in the wrong line? It's going to be short and sweet. It's going to try to, if you think about how your soul is so smart, your soul's not going to try to overwhelm you with this complex puzzle. It's just going to give you short, neutral chunks of information one at a time. And the more that you practice with your intuition and know how it talks to you, the quicker you can start to, it's like translating a different language. It's like, okay, I see a tulip, which to me is a sign of springtime and new birth. And I put it together with this color, which means this, and start to get more of a read. The question number 4 was, how do I leverage my intuition in a consistent way and learn to trust it more? I love this question. All right, a couple things that come to me here. First off, I love swimming. So I think but I'm scared of deep water, right? So even in the pool, I do not like to swim in deep water, and I'm a strong swimmer. But it's like if I were to say to you, you're like, Kimberly, I don't know how to swim. And I'm like, just jump in the deep water. Just give it a go. That would not be wise. Don't do that. So to learn to trust your intuition is by to practice and to build this muscle, like any skill. Yes, it's inside of you. Yes, it's inborn. Your intuition it's a part of you. But to leverage it in a consistent way means to practice with it so that when you jump into the deep end, in other words, let's say you need to make a huge decision about, moving house or changing jobs or getting married, then you're not jumping into the deep end and saying, is it in my highest good? And you don't know how your intuition works. You don't know what your yes, no body compass is. So I would say, number 1, get an intuition journal. And whether that's in your phone or, if you have a paper journal, and start to practice with it with easy intuitive exercises. It's not about getting everything right, but usually we have our own gifts. So some people are really gifted with numbers, and some people are gifted with names or times, but little things that you can play with every day. So I'll give you an example. When I lived in New York City, I would go to the train at 86th Street. And it was helpful for me to try to guess how many minutes until the next train comes. Because then I know if I have to run down to the stairs to get that train, or if I'm going to have to wait another 5 minutes for the next one. And so I made this a game. And it was like there was enough skin in the game for me to care. Like, okay, it's interesting. Is it 2 minutes or is it 4 minutes? And so every time I'd walk down the stairwell, I kind of have this thought, how long until the next train? And then generally I would see the sign like 2 minutes. And then I could get down the stairs and just track, like verify, was it correct? This is truly the difference between being psychic and psychotic. It's like the psychic, the intuitive in you tracks these little things. And it's like, what is a hit? So when I'm relaxed and just walking down the stairs, and then I get this hit, and then it's correct. And so you note it. How did it feel? How did that information come in? And also note your misses. Notice what was your mental state or your physical state when you asked your intuition something and maybe it wasn't correct. It's not about being right or wrong. It's truly about finding what are the hits and how does it speak to you. What ended up happening for me in New York was really fun because, I just be in my day-to-day life. And then one day I'm going to my comedy class and I'm like running to the subway and I go down the stairs and it just comes into my head without me thinking about it actively. I was like, oh, it's working. And with me being relaxed, it's like, I'm sure you've had that experience where you're in the shower or you're like working out and all of a sudden this information comes to you because you're a relaxed vessel. And that is truly, truly important to connecting with your intuition. Again, I know in our day-to-day life, it's so hard to be a relaxed vessel, but even just taking 5 minutes to sit quietly. And I have a meditation called Sitting in the Power. This is what psychics do to connect with their intuition. It's simply to be in the state of the soul. So connecting with your inner light. I generally like to do this by placing my hands on my heart and breathing. And then imagine that your light radiates, almost like this color of light or a ball of light. You have many colors. And just allowing yourself to expand in that way and then be in your light for 5 minutes, reminding you that you're more than a human, that you are a soul being on the planet. That is a one simple practice that you can do to help you connect with your intuition and your soul self. All right, question number 5. And again, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Hopefully the chat is working correctly. And this is my second live, so still figuring this all out. Okay, the 5th question was, why do I feel blocked when it comes to connecting with my intuition? Gosh, there's lots of reasons. I'd like to talk a little bit more to the person who wrote this. I'll just speak for myself. Generally, when I am blocked, it's because I am not giving the time and space to ask the questions. Your intuition does like targets. It likes to have something to focus on. So if it's really broad, then and let's say you want to know more about, your work life, then maybe you need to be a little bit more specific about, the things that you're asking about. So asking really good intuitive questions. If you want to know some of those, just leave a comment on this below after it's posted too. I'm happy to share some good kind of open-ended questions that trigger your intuition. And I also have a YouTube video on it as well, what I think are good questions. What else will make you feel blocked? I think the fear of the mind, not allowing the mind to settle. So having some sort of meditative practice, I think is really helpful. Now, meditation can look a lot of different ways. For some of us, it does mean sitting quietly. And for some of us who are really tired, if you sit quietly for 5 minutes, you're going to fall asleep. So it's like, what works for you? For me, meditation is swimming in the pool, just going back and forth and doing laps, or walking in nature. That's a really good way for me to meditate. Being in the car, just driving, having some quiet and solitude. I also think, the intuition can come in many different ways. So, if I'm just sitting here and I want to ask about, my child, and I ask a question, receive an answer, that's one way to do it. But there's so many other ways. So, I can put on a voice memo and ask it out loud, because I also have a little bit of ADHD. So it's like, okay, by the time I sit here, then I think, oh, I got to start putting my laundry together. Then I'm distracted. So maybe talking it out through a voice memo or writing it out, journaling, that can be a really helpful way. Using objects in your environment is also a great way to get intuitive information. So, if you have a card deck, it can be simple playing cards, or it can be like a tarot deck. Using objects in your environment, even in the room that you're in, is also a great way to get unstuck. All right, my friends, let's see if there's anything else that I'd like to share in this intuition Q&A before we close. Let's see. If you have questions, of course, post them in the comments below. And I feel like that's a good start for us. If you are interested, I've got some intuition development labs coming up on Eventbrite, and that's also linked below. And then I've got a 6-month intuition development school coming up for beginners, for truly I'm just want to tap into this and really am curious to know what's possible. So that's going to begin, I believe, January 25th. So more details to come, or reach out to me at any time. And I want to send you all a very big blessing. Thank you for being with me today, and hope to see you soon. All right. Bye for now. Bye-bye.